What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Talk of the Tundra, a proud partner of the Eurostep Podcast Network and the Blue Wire family. I am your host, Numac, and joining me, as always, is my joyous host, Jordan Tresky. Jordan, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. I am joyous. It's the giving season.
That's right.
It's Christmas season. And the Packers gave me a week off to just chill, relax,
Little R&R, a little rest and
uh,
relaxation.
a little rest in Rodgers.
And he was certainly the center of attention early on this week. But before we get into all sort of that stuff, obviously the Packers have a bye week, so we're doing a mailbag later. So stay tuned for that. But before we get into all that, let's talk cheese board. Because obviously the Packers are coming off their 28-19 win over the Chicago Bears this week, or this past Sunday. So we have some nice slices of Munster to hand out. The first of which going to Christian Watson. 2 touchdowns for the rookie. Just about 100 yards all purpose. Can do some quick math. 94 yards all purpose. That one rush coming on the 46-yard touchdown. And then 3 catches on 7 targets for 48 yards and a touchdown on fourth down. So just keeps on scoring touchdowns. Touchdown scoring machine. Doing well. Hopefully keeps it up and secures himself a Rookie of the Year trophy. Next, earning a slice of Munster as well is A.J. Dillon. By far his best game of his year so far. 18 carries, 93 yards, and a touchdown on the ground, and then 26 yards on 3 catches receiving for A.J. Dillon. Aaron Jones was a little bit hobbled this week, which led to his increased carry load, so nice to see him rise up to the task when called upon to do so. Next is Devondre Campbell, his first game back from his injury he sustained. I believe it was against the Lions or the Bills. I forget
Bills,
which. Yeah, the
Bills
Bills.
game, yeah.
10 tackles, 6 of those solo, but earning the cheese mostly because the run game wasn't stopped entirely because of obviously the big rush by Justin Fields and just the amount of yards that came up. But he was definitely a difference maker on a lot of the run, a lot of the running plays the Bears ran where he was stopping them short and things like that. He was definitely a noticeable difference maker in that facet of the defense.
Absolutely.
So, and then the last one, we're giving one to every member of the offensive line this week. Elton Jenkins, Zach Tom, Yosh Nijman, Josh Myers, and John Runyon Jr. No sacks allowed this week from the line. Only 2 pressures, one by Josh Myers, one by Zach Tom. Zach Tom obviously slotting in for David Bakhtiari after his surprise appendectomy. So, just a great job this week as a cohesive line to keep Rodgers upright and allow him to have a fine day. 1 touchdown, 182 yards with a 18 for 31, so not terribly great, not terribly bad, but kept them upright. And then obviously A.J. Dillon had a lot of yards on the ground today to go with Christian Watson's 46-yard touchdown. So just a all-around nice day for the offensive line and what I don't think we've seen all year from them to where we could like say, hey, for the most part, pretty darn good game from all of you. So it was nice to see them finally come uh, up to the task and produce a good week.
Yeah, for sure. And as you said, like it's been makeshift for the most of the year. Not the last 3 weeks, but with Bakhtiari being out, having Zach Tom step in, 2 days before the game in
Yep.
Chicago. I
Yep.
mean, that's as good as you can ask for, even against a Bears team that isn't all that fierce on defense.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So the cheese board after 13 games. Leader in the clubhouse still is Aaron Jones with 9. Christian Watson hot on his tail with 5. A.J. Dillon, Devondre Campbell, Preston Smith, and Rashawn Gary each have 4. E.J., Jair, John Runyon, Romeo Doubs, and Rudy Ford all have 3. Aaron Rodgers, David Bakhtiari, Kenny Clark, Keyshawn Nixon, Pat O'Donnell, Randall Cobb, Russell Douglas, Quay Walker, and Zach Tom have 2. Then Alan Lazard, Eric Stokes, Darnell Savage, Jerron Reed, Josh Myers, Chris Barnes, Mason Crosby, Bobby Tunyon, Sammy Watkins, and Yosh Nijman have 1. And then rounding out the list at the very bottom is Joe Barry with -1. Gotta make sure
I
we
forgot about that.
gotta make sure we slide those in every week. So that is your cheese board. As always, you can find the recap of the previous week's game and a preview for the next week's game on the Substack. Um, I tweeted it out from the Taco Tundra account every Thursday when these come out. Usually, you can go subscribe there and find all other things GSPN related there on the GSPN Substack. So, without further ado, should we talk Gutey and Matt LaFleur's comments on the future of the Packers and particularly Aaron Rodgers? I know it's your favorite topic.
Let's do
Um,
it.
I can't remember the last time we heard from Gutey this season. I think it might have been preseason or even before that. Um,
Had it been.
Something like that.
I don't think you even really mentioned him making comments
Right.
since then.
Right. But he had a press conference on, I think it was Monday of the bye week. Yeah, Monday. And had I thought for the most part, Gutey gives a good interview and he's quite honest. Like he's definitely a guy who's been media trained before. um, but the main topic that all the reporters talked about is the story of the Packers offseason, and it is Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love or both. And uh, they talked like I think the first question out of the reporter's mouth, which I'll let you sort of take off with Jordan once we get into it, is um, did Gutey think that they saw enough of Jordan Love to make a decision on the 5th year option? And Gutey said without a doubt that they were. They were really pleased with his progression, and they had seen enough to pretty much solidify their decision on what they want to do with them. All reading between the lines context being that they are going to pick up that 5th year option. So I guess I know you're happy about that, Jordan. Do you have anything to add about being so certain that they'll pick it up despite only having seen about a quarter or a game and 3/4 of him?
I guess my thoughts would be it's a very obviously, as we see, it's a very hard line to walk down because you're trying to appease both parties because they want to keep their interest in both Rodgers and Love and talk up Love while without discounting Rodgers and vice versa and all this stuff. Because ultimately, as we talked about, I think at the end of the pod after the Bears game,
Yep.
It's two sides are dancing right now, and it's a matter of one person or one party to initiate a breakup or initiate a retirement or initiate a trade, whatever the case may be. So yeah, I think it's encouraging to hear. And yeah, the other thing too, it's incredibly hard to find a quarterback. We don't know this at all because we have been incredibly lucky to see 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. I'm not seamlessly, but pretty darn close to seamlessly transitioning from one another.
I think it was very similar in that, what was it, 2007 he left, I believe, because 2008 was Rodgers' first year. That first year with Rodgers was kind of like iffy. And then
6-10.
Yeah. So then
and then 11-5.
And then it went right off. Like we had 1 year of like hesitancy. So you're right that we've been blessed to have good quarterback play for almost 2 decades.
And they've had these gap years, like this is a gap year, hopefully. And whenever they've been down, they haven't been down very long.
Right.
So that is also the context of where we're at of this over long extended period of successful Packers football.
Right.
So if you're going by that guideline, and it's going to seamlessly go into the comments that I believe LaFleur made.
Yep.
If you're how do you say it? If we're going to go with the quarterback that gives us the best winning chance, we're going to play them.
Yeah, that was Gutey's comments. We'll talk about that later in the mailbag.
Oh yes, yeah.
Talk about later that in the mailbag because one of our listeners had a question or surrounding that in general. So So we'll get to that whole argument later as it talks about winning. But Gutey also had talked about same thing with Matt LaFleur that they want Rodgers back because that was the big quote coming out of Rodgers' mouth on Sunday after the game was the mutual interest of having him back. Talking about Christian Watson as Jordan salutes was having Christian Watson's breakout season playing a role in the decision of Rodgers to come back next year, and sort of snuck into the end of that answer from Rodgers was there has to be mutual interest. So, understandably, they both got Matt LaFleur and Goody got asked about wanting Rodgers back, and they both said pretty much, yeah, like we'll talk about it in the offseason, but for all intents and purposes, the Packers invested a lot in him. They made a big decision to do so this past offseason, and they want him back because of that. And but Goody said they'll talk about it in the offseason. So it's definitely like he'll most likely be back if nothing changes. But like you said, it's ultimately a dance between Love, Rodgers, and the organization trying to navigate these waters despite having just signed that extension.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting that Matt LaFleur had said with all the changes that have like happened throughout the organization the last year, like within the last since the end of last year essentially, like how do you assess Rodgers' year? And I thought it was very interesting that like he had talked about that they all expect Rodgers to be Aaron Rodgers like all the time, but that you have to take it with a grain of salt when he has a bad year because it's a lot of change that came in. Like he went, I never really thought about it in having like in the way he put it, but he literally had like an entirely new wide receiving group. There was like just nobody that really came back that he had solid repertoire besides Alan Lazard and Cobb. And even then, Lazard was wide receiver 3 at times on last year's team between Devonta Adams and MVS. So
Yeah.
slotting Lazard into that wide receiver 1 role took some time, obviously, and he was not cut out for it, as we talked about. But then you get into the conversation about should have Rodgers been at OTAs with the rookies and all of this stuff to
Well, it's
make
also offensive coordinator Luke Getsy's not there. They bring in Tom Clements, who's his old
right,
quarterbacks coach during the McCarthy years and stuff like that.
right,
But like to your point, the OTAs and just like all of the time that you missed, and yeah,
right.
does that prevent the season from being any different? Maybe, maybe not. I
Maybe
mean,
not, right. Maybe it helps the offense get started a little quicker,
I
but
definitely
it's
think that would be the
yeah,
case.
but I don't think it helps the defense, which is like where a
No.
lot of the issue I think is this season. Besides that stretch of games where the offense just wasn't working.
Yeah, it's very easy to Monday morning quarterback every little thing,
Yeah,
but ultimately, what it comes down to is there's a lot of change. The Packers were slow to kind of, I don't want to say adapt or just like, I don't know how you say it, but like just kick on the right way that you'd expect from them going into a contending season. That was all the talk.
right,
And we quickly found out that the standard that they set for themselves was way too high.
right. Especially for this season with all the changes they made. It's
Yes.
just tough as to how to do it. So,
Yeah.
um, LaFleur said that collectively everyone had to be better, including him. Like there's no shortage of players that need to be better on both sides of the ball. So at least they're honest and recognizing that. But he did talk about the offense showing improvement, which is not to be an optimist, Andy, but I think that is a highlight of this part of the season. Is that despite not making the playoffs and despite not winning games that we should win, like the Eagles games or the Lions game, et cetera, since that Lions game, the offense has looked like, for better for worse, on average. Like Rodgers hasn't
It's the
played
defense.
right. It's the defense that's losing
They,
games,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
I think it's encouraging to see most parts of the offense clicking. We're still very frustrated that they throw the ball 40 yards down the field on 3rd and 3 or 4th and 3.
Yeah, there's really been some balance that is slowly but surely being restored.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's the missed opportunities that we were talking about earlier in the season, even in their wins. I mean, it wasn't like they're blowing teams out of the water that when they were on what 3-1.
Yeah.
Um,
After the Bucks game, yeah.
yeah, they're winning these games by super thin margins and all this stuff. Like last week was the most comfortable win that they've had since the first Bird game.
Yeah.
But that's all I could really say at this point.
Yeah. Even then, like that win wasn't comfortable until the middle of the fourth quarter, almost the end of it.
Yeah, it was the second
They were, yeah,
interception.
right. They were almost losing,
Yeah.
like in the fourth quarter.
So yeah, I mean, just seeing the offense kind of finally capitalize more frequently. Obviously, it helps that Christian Watson has turned into 1998 Randy Moss in the last 4 weeks.
Love to see that.
Yeah, and that's not an exaggeration. He is on
Yes.
par with the 19 rookie year Randy Moss, which is
Crazy.
buy your Christian Watson jerseys now, folks.
They're gonna get expensive.
Yes, they are. But yeah, I'm very pleased with that the offense is finally kicked on, and that they've had this ascendance from Christian Watson, and hopefully more to come.
Right. Absolutely. Um, Continuing a little bit from their comments, uh, on defense, they tried to get Gutey to talk about why the defense just hasn't been good. And
The gotcha questions.
yeah, he said twice that it's never one thing, it's a culmination of things, which obviously is true. But one of the
Yeah,
one of the comments that sort of stood out to me was I couldn't figure out who asked it, but someone had asked like, where is the disconnect? Um, I think no, I'm sorry, I back up. Somebody had asked what happened to the defense, just plain and simple. Like that was the question. And Gutey said they had to find where the disconnect was, and followed it up with quote, "Never one thing. We have a lot of talented guys on defense, but we have to come together as a team, and that takes sacrifice. Not a lot of team, a lot that goes into being a good team. And if you can kind of like read between the lines there, like it seems like they
yeah.
have
There's gonna be some sacrifice, all right. Joe
right.
Barry, get on the rock.
I agree, but I also think that there's more to be talked about there when it comes to the
Yeah,
team working as a unit, like the defense working as a unit, because I don't think they are, and I think that was what was the most frustrating that he said, like that Goody said. Well, first, Goody said the most frustrating thing was the consistency issues, which I think stems from not working as a unit. And
yes.
take that how you may, we've kind of ragged on Jair for not looking focused at times, and a lot of the defense not looking all the way focused at all the time. So maybe I that's
Unit also goes down to. I mean, it's not just Joe Barry that's responsible for
yeah,
this
it's all the
Packers
position
defense.
coaches.
Yeah, it's a whole bunch of units
Yeah.
within the organization.
So here's to hoping that they make a change.
Do
But
we know who's like the defensive captain? Is it Devondre?
it was Devondre before he got hurt. I think Quay was wearing the dot. I don't think he was captain though, but I'm pretty sure it is Devondre as like the
Because I
defensive
think I
captain.
think that's also another. I mean, we talked about Jair specifically, but like when you lose guys like Zadarius Smith, who's a very commanding presence,
Hmm.
and it was pretty telling when you could tell that they're phasing him out. And even all the work that he did to come back to play the playoff game and play well last year, like he did that with a back surgery going into a year that, I mean, if you show any signs of slippage or injury, you're going to get cut because it's going to be, salary cap and all the void years that they attach to so many different guys. Um, Adrian Amos kind of having a down year doesn't help matters too. And he's been he, like Zadarius, came at a very interesting time and helped restore the Packers defense in a big way.
Yep.
Um, I'm missing Chandon Sullivan too. That's a guy that we don't really. I don't think we even mentioned, but like, not the greatest cornerback by any means, but played his role, played really well. Undrafted guy who they always find some of these guys off the scrap heap, or
Right.
if they go undrafted, like it's stuff like that that you just again, you don't realize you're going to miss until a season like this happens. But
Right.
I
Um,
think that kind of just shows you just how much has been lost
mhm.
in that sense.
For what it's worth, the elected team captains this year on defense were the three having their not best years: Kenny Clark,
Mm,
Adrian Amos, and Devondre Campbell.
yeah,
So
that's tough.
that is tough. Like Kenny Clark, for all intents and purposes, just isn't having a good year. Same thing with Adrian Amos, is not really showing up too much in places, like making flash plays, but not being seen too much in the game otherwise. And then Dre obviously getting having a slow start to the year, then getting hurt didn't help a lot for his campaign either. So maybe that has something to do with it, that the captains on defense weren't having impact plays. But I don't think that's by any means the end all be all excuse as to why this defense isn't performing as it should.
Yeah, there's definitely many factors.
Right. Uh, that's pretty much it for out of the Gutey and Matt LaFleur press conferences. There's a lot of good stuff in there. If you haven't, go watch them. They're just interesting to listen to, and I thought uh, Gutey did quite the good job in front of the reporters.
Good.
Just so, all in all, good stuff from the leadership of the Packers this week. Should we get into a mailbag?
Mailbird.
Mail,
Yes.
mail, mail, mail. My first ever mailbag. I am excited. So we'll jump right into the transition from the mailbag. These come from Discord and from Twitter. So if you want to ever drop in a question for a
How would
mailbag,
you
or
do that?
you
How
would
would
go
you?
you would go to gspn.info, click on the Discord invite link, come in, say hi, join the talks. It's popping off right now. We're getting a whole bunch of new members. It's some good stuff. We love having all the new community members in there. So this one comes from Keith, a natural transition from our Gutey talk, as he has a question about uh, Gutey's comments. So this is from Keith. He asked it on Twitter. What possible logic is there in Gutey essentially saying he's not interested in sitting Rodgers, even if the Packers are mathematically eliminated from the playoffs? Um, I'll start with this one because I have the answer because he answered it in the press conference. Um, he talked a lot about the Packers having a historically winning culture. That like winning is a strong thread woven out through the Packers organization, and that as long as he's there, they're never going to go out and sandbag games for a draft pick. That they owe it to the guys in the locker room and the fans to go out there and try and win every game they can, even if that means having a lesser draft pick going forward. He wasn't saying he's not entirely interested in sitting Rodgers. That was like what he was talking about in the press conference as to the best chance to win games was more so they want to go out and win games, even if that means like having Jordan Love out there. Like if they think they can win a game with
Yes.
Jordan Love, they will go out and win a game with Jordan Love. But that doesn't mean they're gonna sit Jair or sit Kenny or any of the big players that are playmakers essentially for the sake of getting a better draft pick and sandbagging the game. Because another reporter had asked, like, do you think like Jordan Love can win a game? Because they had talked about Gutey had talked about that every young quarterback needs to go out and win and like make those mistakes that come with becoming a great quarterback, similar to what Rodgers did his first year. And Jordan Love hasn't had to do that yet. And they like eventually, when Jordan Love gets his chance, if it's with this team or somebody else, will have to go through those spells of making mistakes. And Gutey said it himself, where he's like, "Yeah, we just need to go see Jordan Love do it, and if that means it comes these last 4 games, so be it." But he didn't like commit to sitting Rodgers. So the logic is just that they don't want to be lulled into a losing culture and making guys pissed off that they're not going out and winning. Because besides like the guaranteed contract guys, you don't know when some of these guys are going to play in the NFL again or have as good as opportunities as they have now. So they just wanted to make sure that they have that winning culture, that they're there to win and achieve um, great outcomes, as opposed to just looking out the next year.
Yeah. Also, I mean, call me old fashioned, call me a fuddy duddy. What is there really to accomplish tanking games? It's not like the NBA, and even then, the NBA has changed their draft lottery rules
Right.
to where the top three teams have 14% odds, or whatever the case, or whatever the number is.
Right.
Like a couple of years ago, it was like with Trevor Lawrence going out in the draft, it was like he's the most can't miss prod or prospect ever, and blah blah blah. And it's like it hasn't
He's
instantly transformed Jacksonville. Not that that was their only problem.
right.
Um, I don't see. Yeah, would it be nice to have for the Packers to have a higher pick? But that also is not banking on the fact or banking on the fact that whoever you want them to draft, they're not going to draft.
Yeah.
They have not. They
Never
do their
ever.
process year after year. It's always draft a wide receiver, blah, 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 blah. And then they go after Eric Stokes or Jordan Love, the guys that people freaked out about,
Right.
including Aaron Rodgers, or Quay Walker. Like, just the list goes on and on. They are
Yep.
very particular about their draft process. So, I don't know. I am almost 100% with that because I and selfishly just want to see Jordan Love. And plus, too, it's going to be when Jordan Love wins a game, that is going to be a thrilling day.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's sadly getting closer to Love not playing a game. Like I'd be honestly
Yeah.
surprised at this point if he does, given the comments from both of LaFleur, Rodgers, and or all of LaFleur, Rodgers, and Gutey, but we'll see. As it stands right now, the Packers sit at 5-8 in the 11th spot in the draft, which like isn't a bad pick. There's plenty of value to be had there. Like obviously you get further in the draft variance. I
Rashawn Gary was what, the 12th pick?
think something like that. Yeah. So it's
Pretty good.
there's value to be had in the first round of the draft. Like obviously the first pick isn't going to be as sure as the 32nd pick um on averages, etc. But picking 11th isn't bad. And
Mm-hmm.
I think you're getting into like okay, maybe we should have lost at least one of those games if we sweep the last four, which isn't going to happen, but if you end up getting to 9-8, you're at you're getting into the 20s probably.
Yeah.
Um, but regardless of all, I think actually, given all of that and what the tiebreakers are, I think the farthest they can fall is 18th
Oh, yeah.
because
That's a good
they
point.
can't make the playoffs, and that's where
Yeah.
the draft seeding starts for the playoffs is like, or the draft seeding starts at 19 with the playoff
Especially with the
teams,
additional team.
right? So regardless, even if they pick at 18, I'm pretty sure Jair was picked around 18. Jair or I forget who it was. One of their recent
Yeah.
players was drafted in that late mid teens area. So the logic is there. Is it sound logic? Maybe not. Is it the or maybe it is. Is it the logic everybody agrees with is what I was trying to say? Probably not, but um either which way, I think it's just good to maintain that winning culture and prove it to guys that you're there to win and not play for the next year.
Yeah. Also, to reiterate, you mentioned there's a lot of the veterans that they have are making big money. If you send a message to them that we're going to tank games,
Yep.
that's probably going to turn them off and want them to leave.
Yeah.
And I don't think that is necessarily something that they want to do.
Yeah, I agree.
It's clear. I mean, it starts with Rodgers. The moment that they show that they want to move on, then it's going to be an exodus.
Right. Yeah, almost certainly.
Mm-hmm.
This one is from our semi co-host, Big Ty Windish. Uh, are we comfortable assuming Christian Watson can slot in as a number one receiver going forward, or do you think the Packers still need someone better than him? He says, as an anecdote, wording it specifically that way because I think they need more wide receivers either way, but Watson might be him. I'll let you start this one, Jordan.
I am not ready to say he is a bona fide number one. Um, Especially when we were very lucky to see Devontae Adams just burn people week out for what 7 to 8 years.
Right.
It's very encouraging to see him make this progress and to really, again, it's been the last 4 weeks where he's been like, oh, this is different. This is hitting really hard.
Right.
Maybe he is a number one. I'm very willing to be wrong and would be happy to be wrong. But I also, because of what preceded him and seeing how the Packers offense was when teams are trying to take Devontae Adams away from them, they can't just rely on Christian Watson. They had the one of the most talented wide receivers play in the NFL today, and it didn't lead you to a Super Bowl, much less win one.
Right.
So you just can't rely on one guy alone. Can Romeo Dobbs be a nice 2 to 3 wide receiver? Very well. I don't know, but I don't think those two alone are going to do it because they just need. And honestly, I think what they need more than anything, if they can find a tight end that can really kind of give them their passing game a lift, because Tunyon's really good, but not really good, but he's a fine role playing tight end. He'll play
Right.
for at least a decade, but it's just not there, at least in terms of like guys just getting chunk plays or like being a mismatch threat that opposing defenses can have to really worry and key in on.
Right. I think it's definitely an interesting like off-season discussion on their need for a tight end, given what um we see high quality tight ends do in the NFL. Because like you look at, I'm gonna get this briefly because I don't want to go on and on about it. Like the top tight ends in the league, you think of Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Mark Andrews, Darren Waller, and probably another one I'm forgetting about. Travis Kelce is for sure the wide receiver one on his team. Like he's
Yeah.
better at catching the ball and receiving than Juju Smith-Schuster. Mark Andrews is definitely the wide receiver one on his team. George Kittle was until Debo started breaking out, and Darren Waller was until they got Devontae Adams. Like I think that the importance of a pass catching tight end is very important when you don't have a number one wide receiver. And
Yes.
so I wouldn't say that they like need that, but I'm not saying that it wouldn't be nice to have. Like I think Bobby Tunyon is a good middle ground of where they are. I just don't think they like target him enough in the game, or he's just not getting open. Like maybe they need that one step above Bobby Tunyon. So getting
Yeah.
to Ty's question, it's a tough one because Watson is really good right now, and we were saying the same thing about Romeo Dobbs earlier in the season. So I think like they both can be wide receivers 2A and B, but I don't know if you can count on them right now to be like wide receiver ones of the future because it's so early to tell, right? Like they're still rookies. We don't know what the next few seasons looks like for them, and even then, like what it looks like going forward. We've seen wide receivers take steps and look like stars. Like Kenny Galladay is a great example of that. Looked like a star in Detroit and then leaves to go to the Giants, and now he's a bum,
Yeah.
to put it lightly. So what I'd like to see them do is like obviously they're going to keep Watson and Dobbs. Like they're going to be here for the next 4 or 5 years. But then let them continue to develop and then keep taking like early round shots at receivers just to make sure that they're supplementing that wide receiver 2, 3 role in case one of them gets hurt because they absolutely need wide receiver depth. Like that's something they don't have,
Yes.
assuming they don't bring back Al Lazard, and if Kyle comes back, that's fine. But they need like they just need depth pieces, and there's definitely some shots at that in the draft, however you may want to look at it. And so I think my best case would be to keep chasing a true wide receiver one that's established, or keep taking shots at him in the draft. But like early rounds, like don't be drafting third and fourth round receivers as your first receiver, um, off the board, hoping that they can become wide receiver one.
Yeah. I mean, again, too, whenever the transition happens, whether it's with Jordan Love or name another quarterback, you need to give them weapons. It's we talk about
Right,
all the teams that the Packers face this year that made big wide receiver acquisitions, the Eagles, the Dolphins.
right,
This time last year, everybody was trashing to it, Tagovailoa. The Dolphins should move on from him. Jalen Hurts, is he the quarterback of the future? It is so tied to what you have in your wide receivers
yep,
or just your pass catching weapons and the success of your starting quarterback.
right.
So yeah, you never stop building, even if Christian Watson is the next Randy Moss or something akin to it, or if he's just going to score on these massive chunk plays game after game after game for the rest of his career, you
Right.
still need help.
Yeah, you still need like a for sure guy to just be, I guess, the guy. You don't want the guy the way that Tay was Rodgers' guy because we saw how that worked out when it matters. He just doesn't throw
Yeah,
anybody else, but you need that certified talent that will be the guy that comes up clutch when you need him to. Which I'm not saying that Romeo Dobbs and Chris Watson can't be that, but it's not something they should rely on. They say, "Yep, we got it right now. We won't be drafting another wide receiver in the first 4 rounds in the next few years." Like that's not the way that this should be going. But yeah, just keep investing in wide receivers throughout the. I'll say second and third because I don't know if they'll be in the position to draft a first round receiver this year or any year in the future. And
nor
plus,
is that their
their mantra, they won't ever do it.
inclination.
Yeah, like it's this won't do it. If they do, there's talent out there that they could like if it falls to them or if they're in a place to pick it. I wouldn't be upset if they picked a first round receiver and like a good one. Um, but I still just think it's better to fill. They have bigger holes to fill on this team than it is at receiver right now.
Yeah,
So, um, moving on. Tommy in the Discord asked, "What do you do with the corner position going forward? It seems that they have three highly paid slash invested guys with Jair, Eric Stokes, and Roswell Douglas, but none of them can really play in the slot. Would you trade one of them away, or would trading one of them away make sense?" Do you want to go first, Jordan, or should I?
you want to go first?
Sure. I'm not in the camp of trading any of those guys yet, particularly Razul, because I think he just had a down year, and with Joe Barry's scheme, I'm not ready to give up on him yet. Same thing with Eric Stokes, and he's been injured half the year, so it's kind of tough to see what you do there. I agree that none of them can play the slot. What I think might be the well, I should say I shouldn't agree that none of them can play the slot. I think Razul can, and I'll get into that point in a moment. Looking at PFF's slot coverage for the season, I think they have something in either Keyshawn Nixon or Razul playing the slot. I know it's been talked a lot to put Razul at safety. I think that could be a beneficial move for them to get him as sort of a that center fielder to make plays that way. But
Like
according
an old
to
fashioned safety.
right, according to PFF, Keyshawn Nixon has played 118 snaps of slot receiver this year, or of slot corner this year, and has a has one pick in that, as well as allowing a NFL quarterback rating of 82.2 there. So not too bad. Um, Conversely, Russell Douglas has 113 snaps, so five fewer. Um, 13 catches on 17 targets for 140 yards. So I think that both of them can play the slot, but
I feel like a lot of that production is coming against the Bills.
probably. And so, um, I think it's worth that. I obviously Keyshawn Nixon plays like safety typically, right? I'm not mistaken there. He kind of plays that safety role.
I
Or would we call him a corner? Like
I would
PFF hasn't listed as a corner,
yeah.
but I feel like I've seen him in safety. But I guess we'll still call him a corner. I think since Savage's option is so bad, like we don't know what we're gonna do there, but I think it's worth moving Razul to safety and then moving Keyshawn up to slot corner. And just because, like, slot corner being your nickel guy, essentially, won't be in every play. But I think you need Razul in every play because he is that talented at ball hawking and just getting coverage, essentially. So that would be my idea. I wouldn't trade any of them right now, but I would move uh, Razul to safety and then move Keyshawn Nixon to your slot corner.
I don't know what I would do. Um, First, I think this is also based on so Stokes got hurt what the Lions game. Do we what is his official injury? Why am I forgetting?
I think he tore his ACL.
That's
Or
what I
no,
thought it was, right?
I'll look it up.
Yeah. Um Either way, I would imagine sorry, I'm looking this up. An ankle
For
injury,
knee and ankle injuries.
so nothing official,
Yeah, it doesn't
unfortunately.
say. Yeah, this is from November. The exact injury for Eric Stokes is unknown. So I'd imagine just a knee strain and an ankle sprain.
Yeah. Well, either way, it's going to take some time for him to rehab. Obviously, you hope that he's ready for the start of next season. Um, if not, or if things take longer than what you'd hope, or but yeah, what you'd hope to have some kind of wiggle room where you can say, okay, if Stokes is going to take a while to recover, or it's taking him longer up to speed, because again, as we've gone through, more so with linemen than anything, recoveries aren't squeaky clean always. You know what I mean? It takes a while to kind of get back into where you were and to 100% game shape.
Right.
So I think it's good that they have some backup in terms of their cornerback room. But again, I think anything that I think you kind of mentioned it in your answers, like anything that we would want to see out of their cornerbacks is going to be determined on, well, is Joe Barry the defensive coordinator?
Right.
And if not, how does defensive coordinator X or Jim Leonard um
Hey,
you
he's not going back to the Badgers.
he's not going back to the Badgers. So I would assume a lot of Packer fans are going to be on Leonard watch. But yeah, like it's anything that we want to see out of them, it's going to the paradigm is going to change and change fast.
Right.
So at this point, for me, it's a matter of, okay, what options do you have? What what is the strategy of going into the offseason? Who are you going to keep around? Because I mean, anybody that it's you that just signed a contract, I'm sure there are out years that they're going to find in their contracts that you'd be like, oh, well, they're going to move on from him or move on from that guy, or I don't know.
Right. Yeah, just looking at like coverage grades for the Packers like safety positions, they only played three at safety this year: Rudy Ford, Adrian Amos, and Darnell Savage. Like at least in coverage grades according to PFF, and I think that um you just would see what Russell can do there, and if he does it well, then see what he can do. And
Yeah,
I think it's just um worth taking a shot at, just to see, because if they the worst case scenario is that they stick with Darnell and Rudy Ford next year. Like I think they need to bring back Rudy Ford, but
yes,
um they just roll with having Darnell Savage be bad and trying to find somebody to replace him. But I would be hard pressed to believe that Roswell Douglas can't play sort of roaming safety better than Darnell Savage can at this point.
yeah,
Sadly. So
yeah. The fall of Savage has really complicated this more than anything because
right,
there was just something that for me at least, like it was almost always there, and then it just like precipitously just falls off for him, where it's like more so this year, the tackling issues, the focus issues, it's stuff like that that's just so disappointing. And like considering, I think his predecessor, right? It would have been like Haha and
before Darnell.
Savage
I, th- I
because they
think
traded him.
there is a couple in between Haha and Savage, but yes.
Yeah, but very similar that they draft him first round. I
Yep.
think both were drafted first round.
I think Darnell and
Significant.
Jai are the same year.
Yeah. Yes. Significant investment, and it's like it feels like I'm watching the stuff that happened with Haha all over
All
again.
over again. Right. So ever since they got rid of Micah Hyde, that's kind of been the problem.
Yes, big woof.
Yeah, but that's in the past. Uh yeah, I think that we answered that a couple times over now. Uh Next one is from John. What move on the margin can the team make this offseason that will pay the biggest dividends for next season's success? Could be roster, coach, front office, etc. Jordan, you're laughing, so I will let
Numac. I think
I,
you have an answer.
I will let you go first because you were the one laughing to start.
Move on the margin. Hmm. Okay, I got it. Cut Aaron Charles. I'm joking. Move on the margin. I think it's. I don't want to. I don't want to take the answer away from you because I know it's your answer. But I think you look in the coordinator room, if that's a room.
There's no need to be shy about it.
I think Joe Barry.
I
Joe
think
Barry, buddy, we gotta talk.
I think that's the obvious answer. Like certainly, like Joe Barry needs to go, and I think that's what's um going to be the talk of the offseason. If they don't fire Joe Barry, I think fans will riot. But to put it lightly, as for other moves on the margins, it's really sort of tough to look at because it really is just so many individualized holes that surround the scheme of Joe Barry, right? Like they need a second edge rusher that isn't Rashawn Gary. And like that could be a good one, but if it's not utilized to the impact that is being needed to by Joe Barry, doesn't do much. And it's tough to say like maybe the move on the margin is playing Devontae Wyatt more. Like that's a hot take nowadays with how he's performed this year, but when he's
And
playing
what little action is played.
and what action he's playing, he's grading out pretty good on PFF, but obviously PFF isn't the end all be all. Take that how you may. He's getting graded well by guys who watch people, I should say guys, by people who watch a lot of football. And so it's interesting. And I think one of the pool reporters ought to ask Matt LaFleur and whoever's in charge on defense, obviously Joe Barry, but you know what I'm saying. Well, just why Devontae Wyatt's not playing more? Like, is it really because they think he's not as good as Dean Lowry or whoever, um, or Jaron Reed or
Sharon
Slayton
Reed
or any of
or
them? Like,
yeah.
is what they think because they invested time into, or they invested a high draft pick into Devontae Wyatt. He's already 24. Like, they ought to start seeing what this guy can do. Like, he turns 25 in March. I think it's just worth seeing what he can do and getting him more reps throughout the season, like this last final four games, to see what he needs to work on for next year going in, so he can be an impact player on that interior D line.
Yeah, I for position wise, I would say D line because it has kind of been Kenny, you do all the work and let's try to fill in the gaps. Dean Lowry, I mean, serviceable guy. I don't want to shortchange him because last year he was pretty darn good.
Yeah, just hasn't been there
Um,
this year though.
yeah, it's just that's the kind of I mean, it's when the needle is moving in a positive direction, you really recognize it, but it's also like you can't bake on that every year. It's the same thing with Rasul Douglas, obviously. Like as great as it was to have him come in and just like pick off people left and right last year,
Right.
it is also like this guy was on a practice squad. And whether it was not due to talent or whatever else the case may be, there's a reason why that happened.
Right.
And he never has been in outside of the Eagles. I think he was there like 2, 3 years. It was like bouncing around and then you're trying to find another home and all that stuff. Like that's the type of class of player that we're talking about, where it's not like it's middle class players that are going to be in the league for a long time
Right.
that you can't just lock in to be like, that's your guy, that kind of thing.
Yep. Dean Lowry, for what it's worth, last year had 5 sacks over 17 games. Only half a sack this year.
Yeah.
So, just it's just not there for him getting to the quarterback this year. Which, again, who is to blame for that? Is it Dean Lowry? Is it scheme? It's hard to tell. It's probably a little of both.
Yeah.
Four pass deflections last year, only one this year. He had a forced fumble last year, none this year, which whatever. Or I'm sorry, he had a fumble recovery last year. That's not so that doesn't really matter too much. But just overall down besides tackles, he has 43 tackles this year as opposed to 42 last year. But 9 QB hits last year, only 5 this year. 5 tackles for loss last year, only 1 this year. Like it's just he's having a bum year.
Yeah.
And so why not just throw your first round pick in there for a game? Like even against like the two bad teams we play, like the Rams next week on Monday night, and against not Matthew Stafford, they're Baker Mayfield or John Wolford or whoever they're playing
Baker
tonight against.
Mayfield has been playing as we have been recording this, and he
Has he?
signed 2 days. Yes, he has.
I can look 4 for 8. Good for him. Uh, but yeah, like against Baker Mayfield, whoever the Rams decide to trot out against the Packers, why not let Devontae Wyatt just kind of go off and see what he can do? Same thing against the Lions. Like sending him out against the Dolphins and the Vikings might be good to see how he can do against a higher level of talent, but I just think he needs more snaps these last few games than I guess otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they want to go out and win, as Gutey said, but I don't think the game rides on Dean Lowry's back.
No,
So
not at
just
all.
let him go out there and see what he can do. So, next question is a bit of a troll, but I'll indulge him. From Wico Stan. Why should Alec Ingold be the Packers' #1 offseason target? Stan is obviously is a Green Bay area resident, or how do I put this? Went to the same high school I think Alec Ingold did, and is standing him as such. But trolls aside, if Alec Ingold was a free agent, he has 1 more year left with his Dolphins contract. Wouldn't it be a bad idea to go after him? Alec Ingold is a pretty darn good fullback at getting 1 yard, which the Packers haven't been able to do a whole lot.
No.
If there's one thing to be said about Alec Ingold is that he can get a yard. And he
Mm-hmm.
has been for his entire career. It's why he's still in the NFL. Because he did it a lot for the Raiders, been doing it a lot for the Dolphins. So either which way, if that opportunity should present itself, should be targeted, not #1. That's all I'll say on that. And our final question is from Aaron. This one was on Twitter. Which Packers player would be the best at the other major sports? Basketball, baseball, soccer, and hockey.
Watson might be really good at soccer.
I could see him being quite good at soccer.
I mean, like he's like a wide receivers and wingers are kind of
Tall,
just like
tall, fast.
yeah. What's another good one?
I'm trying to think of basketball. Did Big Dog play basketball? I don't know if he did or not.
He went to USC. That was not English. UCLA.
He did. Oh, hold on. Um, it looks like he did play some basketball.
There we go.
He played 7 games for UCLA for in the 2002-2003 season. He averaged It's uh 3 minutes a game, 1.3 points, zero point 0.6 rebounds, and zero point 0.1 assists.
Good job, Mercedes.
So yeah, he scored 9 points in 26 total minutes.
That's what I'm
So
talking about.
maybe he's not the best choice. I could see. I wonder if Jair would be a good like point guard.
Like a Javon Carter, like
Yeah,
bulldog kind of guy, if
yeah.
he is locked in. Uh,
I don't
who's
think I
another?
don't think Rodgers has any place in any other like of those four sports.
Yeah, no, good, no. I mean, he at a time. I think now. Well, I don't even know what another like. He was fleet of
Oh,
foot.
I bet you Jair uh could do baseball too.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of guys that probably be really good at baseball.
I'm trying to think of hockey. Hockey's one to like to gauge.
Hockey is very tough.
Tunyon, Bobby Tunyon, stick him in goal.
This is massive, man.
6'5", and dude, there's goalies that are 6'10" playing goalie.
6'10".
Something like that. I think it's the Lightning goalie's huge.
He's just blocking the goal. Then how do you score on that?
I don't know.
Um,
Not that goalie. Not Valesky.
I feel like AJ Dillon's good at something. Does he do softball games? I think he's well. Obviously, there's the Packers charity game. I feel like he would be a good. He'd be actually. You know what? He would be really good at soccer as like a defender that just like takes out people.
Yes.
You know what I mean? He's just so massive. Um,
Ben
yeah,
Bishop for the
that's
Lightning was 6'7",
oh my lord.
and
Wow.
the tallest hockey player, the tallest NHL goalie ever was 6'8". So not none 6'10", but 6'7" is
6'8" still pretty
still
because
pretty
you have to
tall.
move around on skates, you know.
Right. So
Um, it's not like Manu Bowl was in net back there and doing saving the 5 hole.
right.
Or 5 bowl in this case.
Wow.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't. There's got to be other guys that come to mind, but I cannot think of any of them.
Yeah. Trying to like all of them are athletes. Like all the specialists are athletes, so they can probably play a lot of these
Do you think Mason Crosby would be good at soccer now?
no, not right now.
You don't think he'd be?
Not right now. He's old. He's old.
You don't think he'd be legging out a 30-yard free kick
I
middle of the
think I
pitch?
think he could like go down on a free kick, but like he has to be dribbling the ball and running and able in order to get the free kick and get fouled. Like I just think that's where he's not like gonna be good is getting the opportunity to get fouled.
Yeah. Jordan Love is. I think Jordan Love would be really good at soccer, where he's at the middle of the pitch waiting to come on the field, and the guy that he's about to replace isn't coming off the field. I think he'd be really good at that.
Got it. And I think with that we can call this a podcast. Um, that's the mailbag, folks. That's this episode. Couple things to promote on the GSPN network. Uh, Adam and Andrew released their final eight, I believe,
Yes.
for the World
Elite
Cup.
Eight.
The sure, the final eight of the World Cup. As they kick off, I think tomorrow
Yes.
or today, as you're listening to this. So go listen to that before those games kick off. I'm trying to look it up quick. 10 o'clock and 1, it looks like. Or no, yeah, no, same as always, 9 and 1 uh, for the games tomorrow. And then same thing on Saturday. So go listen to that quick before those games finish up for that round. and then they'll have another one for the semifinals, I imagine. Same thing, previewing the final. Um, they also, Adam and Andrew released "Cruising for a Bruising" this morning. This morning being, I believe, Thursday morning. Grading the outfielders as well as talking about um, the Colton Wong trade. Those as two separate episodes. I'm trying to see, yeah, the Brewers outfield today, as well as the free agent talks at winter meetings. Brewers have been doing nothing. And then
Very busy winter meetings for the
I
Brewers.
don't know if they even went. And then before that, they talked Colton Wong being traded to Seattle for Jesse Winker and Abraham Toro. Um, do you and Adam have One in Six coming out soon?
Yes, we will be recording as this drops. So we are recording Friday morning, and we will be dropping Friday before the Bucks play the Mavericks at an absurdly time. They play at 9
Oof.
because it's
Oof.
got to fit around national TVs.
Has to. Even though they play in the central time zone.
Yeah, both teams do. I believe it's in Dallas, and they're
Yep.
still sticking this 9 down our throats.
Yep. Pause. um, then Eurostep, the Ty Rohan released on Monday. Merry Christmas. Chris Middleton is back and dazzling in his season debut. So go listen to all of those podcasts. Be sure to rate and review all of those podcasts. Uh, I'm going to sort of try and find a review just in case we had one and not go 2 months without reading one. So, but before we go, you can always check out gspn.info to go find any of those links. Pretty much all things Eurostep Podcast Network. So, no reviews means this podcast is over. Going into next week, bye week, we won't see you for a post game pod, but you will hear from us next Wednesday as we preview the Packers taking on the Rams on Monday night. So thank you all for listening, and Jordan, thank you.
Thank you.